page 545. In you there is always a secret angst that all of a sudden you could be struck by the death, and at the same time, an undefined fear prevents you from spending serious thoughts and feelings in order to face the unalterable fact in full consciousness, namely that your current life is limited, and that you will sooner or later inevitably die and go into the death life, which, through religious, ideological, and philosophical irrational teachings, is so wrongly explained to you that you can understand nothing of it at all, let alone get closer to the truth, even by a speck of dust of a weight. In your life, you, human beings of Earth, there is hardly any other happening which you make worse than the death, about which you push aside every thought and every feeling. But apart from the death, there is also the preceding dying, which you do not dare think about and push away everything related to it. But also with regard to the procreation and the birth, you make no or hardly any thoughts and feelings, because you normally simply procreate thoughtlessly, and take birth as implicitness, even though either is a significant process in which a very great responsibility is laid, and which requires a great conscientiousness. It is terrifying to see that you occupy yourselves so little with the fundamental beginning and the unavoidable end of your earthly existence. And if you do at some time, occupy yourselves with it in an attack of must do, then only in anxiety or fear and with creeps. And this while you thoroughly occupy yourselves with other and insignificant and irrelevant processes and things, such as with your pathological craving for pleasure, their material joys, wishes, passions, and desires, etc., to which you attach an extremely great importance. You research and ruminate over various kinds of unnecessary things, over your riches, your self-elevation above your next ones and fellow human beings, as well as over countless useless things and excessive apparent joys of your life, but not over what would bring you clarification with regard to the fundamental beginning and the unavoidable end of your earthly existence. Procreation, birth, life, dying, death, and rebirth of the spirit form, together with a continually new personality, are very closely connected to each other, because one thing is the consequence of the other. But you do not take the whole thing seriously. Instead, you irresponsibly live only for the day. Out of this, you create in you pathological cravings, vices, hatred, and unpeace, as well as unfreedom and disharmony, in order to live out everything externally, and to let it pervert into bloody and destructive wars. As you learn this through the senseless and irrational teachings in your belief in a god, tin god, or idolized human being, and live from day to day in pure egoism and imperiousness, and irresponsibly procreate offspring beyond all measure, and therethrough bring about immense catastrophes. Already, for the procreation of offspring, you do not attribute the appropriate seriousness and responsibility, so you do everything only for the sake of the sexual pleasure. As a result, only in rare cases are intellect and rationality, responsibility, and some degree of human dignity to be found thereby. And truly, when you, many amongst you human beings of earth, look at yourselves, you who live out in this wise, and do not carry out the procreation act in full responsibility in every wise, but only for the sake of your lack of intelligence, sexual greed, and unconcernedness, then you delight in putting yourselves on par with apes, namely the bonobos and chimpanzees, which only lie with each other for the sake of the pure sexual lust, and they do this in a harmlessness to which you, in your irresponsible acting, do not come close. As a result of this, you all amongst you who act in this kind and wise, you put yourselves below the ape creatures, which act in accordance with the low development level that they hold. And you amongst you human beings of earth, who are not able, or because of your free will are not wanting to integrate yourselves as human individual into your appropriate level of the higher consciousness-based development, which is that of the apes, you have sunk deeply and continue to go down further, so you must not be surprised that it is always getting worse and more catastrophic with your whole humankind, and with all your various relationships, and indeed also with the interpersonal ones, and that you, in your being human in the real and true sense, precipitate steeper and steeper, and faster into the abyss of the depravity. Look at the customs of your bond bindings when you espouse each other, be it between man and woman and woman, or man and man, because everything is directed only towards seeing the bond merely as a matter without any responsibility and obligation, which, moreover, can be dissolved at any time according to your desire and mood. If the one partner has had enough of the other, if money or other problems arise, or if the two spouses grow apart, or if there is a marital breakdown. The fact that children are procreated or adopted in such bonds, who in the whole process are the main victims, and as a result often become human beings who are asocial or forlorn in themselves, that does not worry you amongst you human beings of earth, who belong to those unfair, irresponsible, conscienceless, and non-righteous ones, who go forth in this kind and wise in a bond of marriage. You amongst you who belong to those who carry out bond bindings, your marriage bindings, and the celebrations connected with them, are not rightful, but only matchmaking orgies without any responsibility and conscientiousness, without dignity and esteem, and with regard to a righteous connectedness. But there are also those amongst you human beings of earth who, in your seriously created nature, shudder in disgust at these unambiguous machinations, which is why you would like to turn away from them, but you are rarely successful in doing that, because you are oppressed in your free will through the coercion of the society, the friends, and all those involved. And you young and elderly human beings who do not allow disgust to arise in your thoughts, feelings, as well as in your dignity and in your feeling of honor when you are confronted with such celebrations, customs, and traditions, and therefore, out of your own responsibility, conscientiousness, and righteousness, as well as virtuousness, opt not to stay away from such a doing, activity, organizing, and contributing, you put yourselves on the same level with those for whom the act of entering into the bond is only a matchmaking orgy, and as a result you can no longer be taken into consideration when it comes to evaluating what is right and righteous. You who are in this wise fallible and hostile of the truthfully life conduct in accordance with the creational laws and recommendations, everything has developed in you in such a wise that you live as if in a poisoned, delirious state, through which you cheat yourselves about the fact what life and death really are. And the reason for this is that you do not want to be confronted with it through your thoughts and feelings, whereas the creeps and shyness play just as an important role as cowardice and the fact that already as children you had, because of the irresponsibility of your parents, not been instructed and taught with the thematic of the dying, the death, as well as the procreation, the birth, and the life. Just as this irresponsible omission of the clarification already goes back to their parents and grandparents and the ancestors too far into the past. You human beings of earth, you have built up your life upon unconsidered foundations. So all your customs, vices, Ausartungen, and traditions have long become fixed and permanent terriblenesses, from which you can only break away with great difficulties, and as a rule only through evil disadvantage that strikes you. And in the confusion and in the chaos of your terribleness, you can no longer understand that you cheat yourselves about your dying and death by crampfully trying not to think about it. And if you recognize yourselves as those amongst human beings of earth who were not procreated willingly and not consciously but haphazardly, then your pushing away of all serious thoughts and feelings with regard to your dying and death stands in a very close connection with the unconcernedness and moral low state which was given at your procreation, and resulting out of this in many cases is that you, as haphazard and undetermined procreation fruit go, like a shadow through your earthly life, as unright of a careless and undignified deed, because you are not procreated on the basis of a conscious and deliberate decision. And if you do not recognize this truth, and therefore can find neither the right way nor the rest in your life, then you will, in the end, artificially and crampfully cling to a self-deception by seeing yourselves as a wanted fruit of a procreation, and therewith refusing the responsibility for your existence, and hence are of the wrong opinion that your responsibility for your life lies with those who procreated you. But that is not the case at all, because once you are in this life, even if you did not contribute to the procreation, you nevertheless have to take the full responsibility of your life, for your thoughts and feelings, as well as for all your activity, and for your actions and deeds. But that means, even if your parents do not teach you this, that you yourselves are responsible for what you do with regard to your life, how you form and lead it, whereupon and how you direct your thoughts and feelings, and what your attitude is towards the procreation, birth, and the life, as well as the dying, death, and the rebirth of the spirit form, and the birth of each new personality. And do not let your thoughts and feelings roam to this, that with the death everything is totally and definitely over, because with that you only evince that you keep your consciousness in inferiority, and that you cowardly duck your responsibility towards the life and the death, whilst you also assume that you are not much better or worse than your fellow human beings. If you nourish your thoughts and feelings in this wise, then you live in suspicious imaginations, which, however, do not change a speck of dust of the weight of the fact that sooner or later you will be caught up by the dying and the death, and that this can happen each day, each hour, and each minute. And consider, when you are born and live into the life, the dying, and the death, and are already coming closer and closer, and you do not know when your time of the life according to your right-based life conduct will be expired in accordance with the effects of the creational principles. Bethink yourselves of the true life and the truth of the creational laws and recommendations, so that you are not chicken-hearted ones, and so you do not try to deny away in rigidity all responsibility for your own life and also the continued life after the dying, as well as the rebirth of the spirit form and the new birth of the new personality, through which in you, when your dying comes closer, great and angstful questions begin, which prove that all of a sudden you become confused in what you erroneously believed in all your life.